All right, so today we're really diving into the thick of it with this election. We've got this New York Times piece, right? And it's all about this GOP nominee and their rallies. Let's just say their style is something else.
It's definitely unique.
Yeah, and we're talking about going beyond just reading the quotes. This is some next level stuff.
Right. It really makes you think about the strategy, especially now with the election so close. What's the impact going to be on voters? Is this all just for show or is there a plan behind it?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's get into it. The article talks about this rally on October 19th of this year, and it was at the Arnold Palmer Airport in Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, even the location has you thinking.
Exactly. I mean, it's not just any airport. This is Arnold Palmer. We're talking about a legend. Picking a spot like that, it's about more than just logistics. It's instant hometown pride. Connecting with the audience on that level, that's politics 101.
It's smart.
It is.
And this wasn't just any rally either. This was like the closing argument, So the stakes were high. But then it takes this turn. The article says he starts off with a story about Arnold Palmer, which, okay, fine. But get this, it's a 12-minute story. And it ends with him making this remark about Palmer's,
Anatomy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where things get really interesting. We're not talking about your typical political speech here. This is about grabbing attention, even if it means pushing boundaries.
Right.
Risky? Sure.
Yeah.
But it could also really resonate with a certain audience. Think of it like that shock jock style, but in politics.
And he didn't stop there. The article mentions him using a certain 4-letter word, and we're not talking about darn.
Yeah.
He calls Vice President Harris this word, and not just once. He actually gets the crowd to chant it with him. And there were kids there.
Yeah, that's something else. That's not just colorful language anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, he's deliberately using vulgarity, directing it at his opponent. It's like he wants to break the mold,
Yeah.
But whether that actually works is a whole other question.
It's definitely getting attention. But here's the thing. He knows it's controversial. The article even mentions he got a letter from Franklin Graham, the evangelical leader.
Right.
And Graham's telling him to clean up his act.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? He knows people are talking. He even brings up Franklin Graham like it means something. But then he just blows it off. Says he can't get his point across, can't emphasize enough without talking like this. Makes you wonder, is that really him, or is this all just like an act for certain people?
Right. It's like he knows it's controversial, but he's doubling down. What's the strategy there?
Well, the Times article, it kind of hints that this isn't a one-off thing. They talk about how his whole tone's gotten more, aggressive, especially the closer we get to the election, like on the economy, immigration, those hot-button issues.
Yeah, trying to get people riled up.
It's about tapping into that fear,
Yeah.
creating this us versus them kind of feeling.
So it's not the language alone, it's the whole vibe. This
Right.
whole idea that America's divided, like it's going to fall apart any minute. Have we seen this before in politics, or is this something new?
That's the million-dollar question right there.
Yeah.
I mean, campaigns have always had some fear-mongering, right? Trying
Yeah.
to make things simple even when they're not.
Yeah.
But this feels different. The intensity, the way he just throws out the rule book, it's like someone hit fast forward on how divided we've become.
Yeah, it's like we're in this totally new territory and the old maps don't work anymore. So how do we even make sense of it all? How do we as voters figure out what's real and what's just for show?
Got to be careful.
Yeah.
Can't just listen to everything. When you hear a candidate using those strong words, making big promises, don't just believe it right away. Think about it. What are they really trying to say? Who are they talking to, and what are they trying to make them feel?
It's like being a detective almost, looking for clues.
Yeah.
And sometimes those clues are right there in front of us, right? It's not just about their ideas, but how they talk about them, the words they use, the whole story they're trying to tell.
That's it, exactly. And that's why it's so important to understand how this stuff works, this whole political communication game. There's a reason they say certain things over and over, why they focus on certain groups of people. Once you see those patterns, it's like, well, it all starts to make sense.
It's wild, right? Like, we're in this whole new world of politics and the old playbook's out the window. So for our listeners out there just trying to wrap their heads around it all, what do you tell them? How do we stay informed without getting, swept up in the chaos?
I think it's about being, really active. Don't just listen, ask questions. When you hear a candidate using these really loaded words, these big promises, don't just take it at face value. Think, what's the angle? Who are they talking to, and how are they trying to make them feel?
It's like we need to be detectives or something, looking for clues everywhere. And they're not always hidden, right? It's not always about the policies themselves, but how they're presented, the language, the whole story.
Absolutely. And that's why, understanding how this political communication works, it's like a superpower. Why do they keep saying the same phrases? Why focus on certain groups? Once you see it, it all clicks into place.
Yeah, and this whole deep dive, looking at just this one rally, it really shows you how much strategy goes into this stuff. It's more than just, some off-color jokes. It's the whole package. How they talk, how they get people engaged, even how they maybe try to influence votes.
That's the big question, right?
Hmm.
As we get closer to November, it's not just about who wins. It's about what happens after. What kind of politics are we left with? Does this become the new normal? Or do people say enough is enough?
It's a big question for all of us, not just about voting, but about like being a citizen. We get to decide what kind of politics we're okay with, what kind of future we want. So as we head into these last few weeks, remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and don't just take anyone's word for it. Think for yourselves. This is your democracy.